All right, it's Wednesday, June 7th. This is an end of the day SPY recap, and today we end up with a two-up failure where we started above the high the previous day and then ended up closing down red. This is kind of the third day in the row we're getting that failure. If you notice, start the week, we started above the previous day high and then closed lower. Then we started above the previous day's low but went higher, and now we're starting above the previous day's high and going lower. And it's all happening at the open, which is part of, the methodology I like to use. And even though we have a bias to the upside, clearly chop is setting in here. So if we go to the 15-minute chart, we obviously had the up bias as discussed in the pre-open video and yesterday's recap video. And the first bar here went up green, but we never really followed through for a signal if you're going on the 15-minute chart. If you were real aggressive, let's say, sometimes I do look at the 5-minute chart, and if I really feel strongly about something, you can get long on that first 5-minute bar. But if you did that, obviously you went up here on number 2, 5-minute 2, 5-minute number 3, paused a little bit, and then this next move up, which could have given you the buy signal, failed and immediately came down. So if you got long here on very aggressively on the 5-minute bar, you then switch to the 15-minute bar to see what happens, and you want to see immediate follow through. That's the reason you're being aggressive to begin with, and you set your stop at the midway point of that bar. So it would be a very small loss. It was even close to break even somewhere in here. But then anyway, when bar 3 came down and had a big red close and moved past the midway point of the first bar, you kind of suspected this intraday low was taken out. That was an aggressive short trade that you could either take, or you could just say we're above the midpoint of the prior day and I'm not going to take it. Same way as yesterday, there was a buy trade here to start the session and you were below the midpoint of the prior day, so you might have missed that one and waited for a different type of signal. So if you waited for the different type of signal, you came down, took out, not only the intraday low, but that target, which is always, the pre-market lows if you're going to reverse. Then at that point, you just had kind of not really a strong bounce. The red reversal there was just secondary sell, and that kind of moved down to the midpoint of the prior day and almost to the low. So you had a good secondary trade, a short here that gave you a few hours to take nice profits when close near the low. So in terms of what's developing here after 3 days, you still have a kind of a weekly red bar. Even with the bias to the upside, you haven't quite crossed the midpoint of that bar yet. So we'll see if, on the next 2 days we can hold that area. You kind of anticipate this low being taken out, and we didn't really reach this target. So you have, these two lows, which should be taken out here tomorrow. We'll see how weak things get into the gap. It is certainly possible we get kind of a weekly red bar followed by, maybe who knows, 2 down and then an inside bar and a 2 up. So we still have this target up here, and the weekly chart hasn't quite reversed yet, but the market is certainly chopping around in the meantime, and that's all that's really developed. You can see after that big run up, we're just kind of going sideways. So maybe we're just taking out higher highs and lower lows and eventually going to have a move up. But for now, the only way we get up tomorrow is if we get above the midpoint of this bar, and it's more likely we're going to start lower. So we'll just see, how tomorrow goes with the bias. Again, at this point, short run to the downside, targets here, gaps, but early on, if we can't get follow through, then we'll keep an eye even maybe for the 4th reversal in a row. But it's, it's hard to, you don't really expect that given this type of close. But at this point, we'll just have to see how things open tomorrow.